Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Jordan. It's a delight to be with you all again. I always love being part of these sits, whether I'm leading them or just participating in them. I'm very excited to meet Rebecca. I've always been an admirer of her work, and I hate to begin with a shameless plug, but the podcast I co-host, Self-Control Through Torah, looks at the Torah portion through a Mussar lens, the Jewish ethical self-improvement discipline of Mussar, with my chavruta, my study partner of almost 20 years, Moja Silver. Tomorrow, we're going to record an episode with Rebecca as our guest. And that episode, if all goes well, will be posted on Thursday, looking at Parshat Balak, which is the Torah portion for this coming week. And I'm very excited to engage in conversation with Rebecca, especially now that I've met her. So I also want to begin today with a story. This is a story of something that happened to me just this past week. Periodically, I live in Chicago and I live right along the shore of Lake Michigan. And periodically for my meditation practice, I will do a walking meditation. I'll find a bench or a place to sit in Lincoln Park, which is along the shore of the lake. And I'll set myself in nature and let the meditation be guided by trying to open to nature. We're going to work with that idea today, even though we're all, or most of us may be indoors. Most of us may have limited access to nature. Nature is the great quieter in the right circumstances and with the right frame of intention. Nature can open you out of your mind and out of your head and into the world with which you are interwoven. When I chose a particular bench, today is Tuesday, this was last Wednesday, because I was sitting still, certain animals, pigeons and squirrels especially, got comfortable being around me because I wasn't moving and I wasn't a threat. They were clearly also interested in whether I was going to give them food, and I wasn't. But as I sat, the squirrel, one squirrel in particular that was rooting around for food, stopped and just faced me. And I typically meditate with my eyes in a downward gaze, but not closed, especially when I'm outdoors. And periodically I would raise my gaze, and this squirrel was sitting 4.5 feet away from me, almost directly in front of me, with its tiny little hands like this. I would avert my gaze and look back 2 or 3 minutes later, and the squirrel would be in the exact same position. Now, immediately, I started telling myself a very Disney-like story about how this squirrel was sitting with me, and we were communing, and there was this deep natural companionship. And that may have been happening, but the part I came to focus on in my meditation was that I had to tell myself a story about how nature was interacting with me. There's a really interesting story about how the human and natural, and especially the animal worlds, interact with each other. And I'm hoping that Jordan can post the sheet that I want to share with you today. And we're going to start reading a little bit of Parshat Balak together so that we can see this unique occurrence in Torah where a human and an animal engage in a kind of confrontation. And the animal makes more sense than the human. So I'll just read from the sheet here. When he arose in the morning, Balaam saddled his ass and departed with the Moabite dignitaries. But God was incensed at his going. So a messenger of Adonai took a position in his way as an adversary. He, meaning Balaam, was riding on a she-ass with his 2 servants alongside. When the ass caught sight of the messenger, the malach of Adonai, standing in the way, with his drawn sword in his hand, the ass swerved from the road and went into the fields, and Balaam beat the ass to turn her back onto the road. The messenger of Adonai, the malach, then stationed himself in a lane between the vineyards with a fence on either side. The ass, seeing the messenger of Adonai, pressed herself against the wall and squeezed Balaam's foot against the wall, so he beat her again. Once more, the messenger of Adonai moved forward and stationed himself on a spot so narrow that there was no room to swerve right or left. When the ass now saw the messenger of Adonai, she lay down under Balaam. And Balaam was furious and beat the ass with his stick. Then Adonai opened the ass's mouth, and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you that you've beaten me these 3 times?" Balaam said to the ass, "You've made a mockery of me. If I had a sword with me, I'd kill you." The ass said to Balaam, "Look, I'm the ass that you've been riding all along until this day. Have I been in the habit of doing thus to you?" And he answered, "No." In this extraordinary sequence, we see the extent to which we fail to appreciate when nature is speaking to us. And of course, if we believe in God and use God as our approach, then we can understand that God is speaking through nature. How does nature speak to you? And how much of it do you hear? We are creatures who story our lives in an effort to make sense of them, and we need to in order to try to make sense of our current experience. But we grow attached to our narratives, even if they're inaccurate. And our task is really to try to track the invisible world through the forms of the visible world. So I want us to try to think about doing that today. Before we do, I'm hoping Jordan will scroll down a little bit further and we'll look at just another couple of texts. So we see here in Numbers 22:31 that the Hebrew says that Balaam bows down and prostrated himself to his nostrils. When presented with a power mightier than oneself, in the ancient Near East, one prostrated oneself. And to put one's face in the dirt was to literally recognize the ultimate authority of what was before one. Prostrating oneself to one's nostrils occludes the breath. Balaam realizes here that nature has spoken to him through, God has spoken to Balaam through nature forcefully 3 times, but he has failed to heed it, and so his breath is impeded. In the Shacharit blessing, it says, "V'mutar ha'adam min ha'behema ein, ki hakol hevel." The preeminence of man over the animals is nothing, for all is but a fleeting breath. On the surface, this is a pessimistic message. What it really is saying, that all is connected through the breath. Our supposed preeminence over the animal world and the vegetable and mineral world, for that matter, can occlude our understanding of the togetherness that we can experience with that world. This morning blessing, as loosely translated, not literally translated, but beautifully so, in the Open Siddur Project, says, "All blessings flow from Yah, our God, life of the worlds, who has given the rooster understanding to distinguish day from night." So the rooster in the pastoral world is the shofar that wakes us to the new day, is the aperture for our new understanding, our new experience, and our new birth. And finally, I want to read this translation of a portion of Psalm 19:2 to 19:4. This translation is done by Rav Zalman Schachter Shalomi in his Psalms in a Translation for Praying. Psalm 19, especially the first 5 verses, are deeply insightful and almost mystical in their appreciation of nature. God, the heavens, manifest your splendor, the sky, your fingerprint. How eloquent is its message. Each day speaks to the one that follows, and each night imparts what it knows to the next. No words, no speech, Though nothing is heard, it has voice. So in these times of when many of us are feeling anxiety, uncertainty, disorientation, lack of groundedness, some of us are suffering psychologically and physically, I invite you, not only now, but even in the winter months, whenever you have the opportunity, to ground a meditation in nature, the natural world that still can penetrate the drywall, the plaster, the noises of the city. And we're going to sit with that now. So I invite you to take a calm, relaxed, and centered seated position, if you're able to do so. Whatever position centers you, calms you, and minimizes any physical or other kind of distress. If possible, you should lengthen the spine. Relax and feel heat in the center of your forehead to relax the brow. Cast a downward gaze, or close your eyes if you prefer. And we will begin with the nature within our bodies, the diaphanous membrane between us and the world, which is the air that enters our lungs and continually revivifies us from moment to moment. As you breathe, slow your breathing and deepen your breathing. As thoughts occupy your mind, register them, thank them, allow them to move along. As you continuously and gently return focus to the breath, rest for a moment in the awareness that all of you and all that is within you is eternal. In its essence, unchanging, constant from the beginning of time. The air you breathe, the lungs you employ, the neurons and synapses that register all of this are ancient material from the first moments of this universe. Now move your consciousness to your ears. There may be noise from air conditioners, city streets, appliances, computers. As you opened your lungs, open your capacity for hearing to all the layers of sound in whose midst you sit. Hear and welcome the speaking that has no voice. The last few minutes of silence, know that all of nature, all of the built world, all this ancient matter is silently sitting with you, not in judgment, worry, or panic, but in simple, constant renewal from moment to moment. Last minute and a half or so of this meditation. Open your ears, pores, your lungs, your heart and your mind to nature's endless patience and presence. See if you can simply be with yourself and with all that surrounds you as the ongoing expression of creation. Slowly gather yourself in. Feel where your body is touching your seat and your feet, if they are touching the ground. Softly open or fully open your eyes and return to this sacred gathering. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, for that beautiful practice. We seal this practice with an opportunity for any of you who are in mourning or observing a yortzeit, or if it is your practice to participate in Kaddish, to do so. If you're not reciting Kaddish, you're welcome to stay present and offer your compassion to those who are in mourning. And if you are observing the Kaddish, you're welcome to put the names of anyone you are remembering or honoring today in the chat. If you're reciting the Kaddish, you're invited to unmute yourself now and join me in body or in spirit to rise and recite these words together.
Amen.
Thank you again, David, so much for that beautiful teaching and practice. And thank you to all of us for joining us here today live. We're so grateful to you for helping to create this community of practice every day. So for those who are leaving now, we wish you good health and shalom. We hope to see you again tomorrow at the same time. And all who would like to are also welcome to stay on now to ask David any questions that you have about his teaching and practice, or to share your reflection or any insights or thoughts that came to you in today's sit in the chat box. So if you do have a question, please just type your question in the chat box, and please preempt the question with the word question in all caps so that we can make sure to catch it. And I'll go ahead and get our conversation started, David. I so appreciate how you wove together so beautifully this contemplation on nature and the breath and the divine and our practice and how that all comes together. And it was so beautiful how you said in the very beginning that when you go out to meditate in nature, if you really can pay attention and open in that kind of way, that nature can kind of speak to you,
Yeah,
or bring meditation alive in a certain kind of way. And you had that experience with the animal. And and you're teaching also on Balak and the prostration and the breath, and even the last psalm that you led, and the piece. I was so struck by the last sentence on even though there is no words and no sound, there is voice. And in all of that, I feel like you're getting to something, you're like pointing us to something quite subtle. Like there's this subtle way, if we can have the right kind of quality of attention, that we can perceive how creation is speaking to us.
I really appreciate that comment. You framed it so beautifully, and it is exactly right. And I think it's an answer to Linda's question, sort of asking, um, or I guess it wasn't Linda, it was Heidi, um, asking how I would regard non-natural sounds. And to me, um, you know, we have an idea that sometimes that we have to experience nature in its purity, totally absent of humanity in order to consider it nature. But we are deeply natural. The things that we make are made from nature, and to open to the sounds of lawnmowers and leaf blowers and car alarms, and sirens and boomboxes as natural radically changes your experience of all these things. I think you're right, Rebecca. I think it is subtle, but it's a simple turn of intentionality that can change our experience of all of this, so that we don't have to go out and be on the top of the Matterhorn in order to really understand it, the constant presence of this simple sort of um, effulgence of existence that we are a part of. We are, as a culture, typically very head centered and total, and our heads are um, awash in data. Um, and nature is always presenting its own radically different, simple kind of data. And it is to open to that I really seek um, to help people experience in this meditation, and hopefully one that they can take with them wherever they go, and even in slivers of moments.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes such a profound difference to shift into the understanding, or even the possibility, that everything belongs, actually. As you said, everything is a part of this world of creation, including the appliance. I loved how you called
Yeah,
out the appliances that you might be hearing, because that's exactly what I hear when
yeah,
I'm indoors and I'm really tuning into that sense door of listening. It's like, yeah, there are some birds outside, and I can kind of hear my heartbeat if I listen really closely. And there's a lot of other things going on, but it really changes it to consider that, like, this too belongs. This too
yes,
is this
exactly.
situation, and in that way, part of me in some way. It's all kind of vibrating with that,
That's right. That's right.
that wordless voice,
Yes,
as
exactly.
translation of the psalm said. Yeah. So we have a question from Lori. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for this enlivening and relaxing teaching and sit with the seamlessness of ancient material and experiences into companionship of who we are here and now. I love that phrasing. How do we recognize, honor, and separate out what is ancient grief from current fear and sadness?
It's a profound and really insightful question.
Mhm.
Um, you know, if you, I think Carl Jung was especially insightful about this, that we carry um, within us certain ancient archetypes that shape our own experience, and that our mission in life is to become aware of and unique expressions of how we encounter those and metabolize and incorporate without being taken over by those ancient archetypes. And the idea um, of sitting in nature is, to me, the idea of metabolizing all the wounds and grief, as well as the joys and simple quotidian experiences that we have day to day. We want to get better. We want to feel better. And sometimes the only way to really deepen that process is to simply be with the rest of the world, which is simply being. The act of simply being is the most radical, um, transformative act one can daily engage in if one can find the space to do it. Nature can welcome and open that space, and it's a long process. And the process really deepens when we begin to let go of hoping um, that the pain will stop. We can transform the pain through being in nature. Whether the pain can stop is over the horizon of our knowledge.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that reflection. And yeah, especially I think with grief, nature is just so powerful.
Yeah,
In as simple of a way as just what a relief it can be to lay on the ground, right? Just to release the weight, to
absolutely.
welcome to that feeling of the
Yeah,
earthness and
to
the
lay on the ground and have your bare feet on the ground.
yeah.
What an amazing experience that many of us so rarely, it's very rare. It's probably more rare in modern life than it has ever been.
It's true. It's such a blessing if we do have those kinds of spaces accessible to be able to go out and connect in that way. Yeah. So we have a few people asking for a little bit more from you, David, on how can all those noises be part of nature? Are you saying that any sound is nature? Can you just go into that a little bit more for us? What do you mean by, these different like machines even and cars and all these things being a part of nature? So can you spell that out a little more?
Um, when I sit outdoors, and because when I do so, it's so often in the city, it is not a conceit that I've tried to lay on top of my experience. It's something that's risen up to me during the course of meditations. That all the gears and belts, um, all the engines, um, and all the capillaries and synapses in me all come from a single burst of energy. Now, in that way, sitting outdoors in an urban environment becomes a really unusual opportunity, or a suburban environment, or a rural environment, to to feel the gentle interweaving of the natural and human built worlds. For some people, that's frustrating and enervating. And if that's the case, if you can get deep out into nature and have one of those rare experiences where you can be outside and not hear a single engine, not a plane, not a lawnmower or car, it's a great experience. But for those of us who can't regularly access that, to sit outside allows one to begin to experience all of the world just worlding. It's all part of the same creation. And to sit with it this way deprives a lot of our anxieties about the clashing of those worlds of their power. I don't mean to suggest that we don't have serious environmental problems, but what I am saying is that after we are gone, the world will go on, and it will continue to be made of the same material that it's made of now until it ceases to exist and its materials will go elsewhere. This is the truth of our nature and our being and the world that we see.
Thank you for that, David. Yeah, and I'm thinking about how also for me, I think another way in is also just contemplating how everything in our world of creation, including all of the machines and the cars and the appliances, is earthly
Yes,
element
exactly.
made of the earth. There's literally nothing on this planet, whether a tree or a microwave, that does not actually literally physically come from the earth, right? It's all the same stuff
Exactly.
organized in different ways.
Yes, right.
We have a question that's, a heavy one, but I think it's related to what you were just saying and acknowledging how so much of human activity really is detrimental. You could say for the environment, you could also say for the ability for human beings to exist in a good way and to have what we need in the environment. But someone is asking, what if the future holds a reality where we've destroyed so much of nature that we can't access it in that way? And I think many of us are really tuned into the what is really called like the climate crisis at this
Yes,
point.
yes.
Um, we really want to be honest about what is in store for us over the next decades and generations. And I'm just curious, David, if you have any suggestions for people and how to work with that reality and that sense of what we're losing as well.
I appreciate that question. And it's part of the reason I wanted to do this in this way, which is that um, I believe, for reasons I can't even articulate, that sitting in nature will orient each and all of us in the things we need to do to preserve nature. We can only, through this experience, become more connected to it. Nature, I believe, the world will be fine. It's we who may not be fine in the long run. Nature finds constant ways to adjust to the reality that it is given. And we must do the same. And because we are natural beings, to sit in nature and be with what is given will not only guide us in our spiritual and psychological orientation, but in our action. Um, I cannot give more definitive answers than this because it's a metabolic process that has to happen as we sit in nature and become clear on our responsibilities and opportunities to heal nature. Although we are wounding and have wounded the climate makes constant adjustments far better than our species does. But to sit in nature is to learn deeply about the ways that one might weave those two courses of action together for the betterment of the harmonious whole. If it sounds airy fairy, I can boil it down to this: just be in nature, and lots will become clear to you.
Amen. Amen. It's a beautiful invitation to culminate this rich conversation and rich practice today. That this invitation to go out and be in nature, that simply being in nature is really the way towards healing, helping to heal nature and really ourselves, right? Because we are earthlings. We
Yes,
are this world of creation as well. And it's often the missing piece, also ironically, in a lot of the conversations and thinking around how to manage this situation.
right.
But
And I would just add too that because we're on the verge of the 3 weeks, the sort of lowest emotional valley, the death valley of the Jewish calendar, that to sit with sadness over this issue is one way to sit.
yeah.
Um, um, I am not asking people not to grieve. The calendar gives us opportunities to do that, and one is coming up. But nature does not grieve. Nature natures, and we can learn to do that too.
I mean, nature natures and the world is worlding. And thank you again so much, David, for joining us here today. Thank you, everyone, for being with us, for your practice, for your presence, for these wonderful reflections. And we send you all out with blessing. I hope everybody can find even just a moment this week to sit and be with our beautiful, precious earth. I know I'm feeling inspired to do so, and we hope to see you here tomorrow at the same time for our daily sit, and tune in to David's podcast where you can hear more from both David and myself on Parshat Balak later this week.
Thank you, Rebecca.
All right. Many blessings, everyone.